School of Rock. Santa Ana.
So my name's Matt Summitt, and I am currently a elementary music teacher out in Virginia at Carrollton Elementary School.
Sweet, man. Thanks for joining me today, Matt. Appreciate that, man. And we had the pleasure of meeting when Mr. Summitt was in the United States Navy Band with me in Chicago, Illinois, man. Was that you did that band, and then you did the band in Virginia, in Norfolk as well, or was that your only band?
No, that's kind of what was, originally in the cards, but
Yeah.
as most military musicians will tell you, it doesn't always happen the way that you plan. So
Yeah.
that didn't work out. So I gracefully bowed out. So I was just at Chicago from, what was that, 2012 to 2016.
Yeah. Okay.
I moved back home, and I actually started teaching at a middle and high school.
Hmm.
It was kind of a combined thing. So I was a band director there. And then an opportunity came up closer to home. So I took that opportunity and
Nice.
been there ever since.
Yeah, sweet, man. That's cool. It's nice that you can take that experience and go and teach the kids, man. I mean, that's what we're doing. School of Rock, same kind of thing, man. You learn a lot kind of along the way. And then at some point, I feel like a lot of folks want to share that information. Like, man, I wish I had this when I was young, or I wish I had, I knew this when I started or whatever. And then you want to share that information.
Right.
So how did you get started, man? How did you start playing? Was your family musical, or what's some of your sort of background?
So growing up in a musical family, my dad is a drummer and has been since, I don't know, basically his whole life.
Okay.
Started at a young age. He always played drums. He started gigging really young. So it was instilled in him to be out in public playing. And he kind of brought that to my family. I have an older brother who's a guitar player.
Okay.
And then I actually started out on the drums, and he was, my teacher. And actually, in elementary school, I played a Christmas performance on drums and stuff like that. And I was part of a little, I guess you would call it, we called them assemblies, where everyone gets together. And the principal of my elementary school was also a drummer. So I got to go on stage, and a couple of other students who played drums would play, together. I think I played Wipeout or something like that as a solo. Yeah. So then, I kind of made the switch because my brother already was playing guitar. My dad was a drummer. And I was kind of like, I don't know if I really want to keep taking lessons from my dad. After all, he's my dad. So I was listening to a lot of Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Oh, okay.
And, when you hear Flea play bass, it's like, I think I want to do that.
Yeah, that was the guy. That was sort of who you were listening to. That was kind of the catalyst.
Originally, yeah. I mean, and the bass player in my dad's band at the time was really, really good and entertaining and doing some things that I thought were interesting. And then I just kind of started to develop an ear for the low end.
Yeah.
All of Flea. I mean, he not only is a great bass player, but he was very entertaining to watch.
Sure, yeah.
So,
yeah,
like,
cool.
I want to do that.
Is that the style you kind of got into then and developed? Was like slap kind of style, or?
So I guess the first year I picked up bass was the summer of my 5th grade year. Now, as I'm sure everyone knows, you can't just do that stuff when you first pick up a bass.
Yeah.
So my brother, I will never forget this. The first song I learned was a Rage Against the Machine tune. My brother comes into my room. He's like, I know this song, and you should learn this bass line. Boom, 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 boom. And, I only had to use two fret.
Sweet.
The whole song was almost done. So, once I started to really, basically I was locking myself in my room, and my brother was doing the same thing in his room, and we were putting on CDs, and I'm just trying to pick it up, play by ear. I did take some lessons.
Okay.
And that was kind of the beginning of not necessarily how to be a bass player, because my teacher at the time, his bass was not his first instrument, but he helped me with some of the very, very basic theory.
Sure.
Then I kind of got away from that, and it was more of locking myself in my room.
Yeah.
So I was playing stuff, trying to learn Red Hot Chili Peppers tunes, Primus, especially. I got really
Les
big into
Claypool,
Primus.
man. Yeah.
So it was kind of just, what can I do? And it's weird when you're locking yourself in your room and you're just trying to pick this stuff by ear. you kind of think you got something, but then you come back to it later on once you've gotten better and you realize, oh my gosh, I was playing that wrong this whole time.
Right.
You know?
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
I missed that part. I didn't know that was the bass, stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. That's cool, man. Have you listened to the Lennon Claypool Delirium? Have you been listening to those guys?
Yeah.
That's pretty
Pretty
cool.
good. I was pretty stoked for, we're going to play a whole concert where I guess one set was going to be Rush, like a tribute to Rush.
Oh, wow.
And then they were going to play their own stuff, but then, COVID hit, so
Nobody's...
I think I heard that got postponed, so I'll probably try to go out to that.
Oh, in Virginia there somewhere.
Geddy Lee's another great bass player. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Are they is Claypool, Lennon, are they there in Virginia, or are they just touring through there?
I don't think so. It was just touring, and where I live in Virginia, a lot of big acts. You don't have as many venues. Like when I was living in Chicago, it was like we could see anybody we possibly ever heard of.
Right.
Whether it was a small venue, big venue. So it's hard. I might have to drive a couple of hours, whether it's going up to the Capitol, Richmond, or, Virginia Beach Amphitheater, which is pretty close to where I live. They have some big acts, but it's not necessarily, it's hard to get the acts that kind of fall in between the super small venue and the really big venue.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You get the small guys.
One of the big venues for that around here has been under repair or construction because their canopy had some issues.
Oh no.
So a lot of those were getting canceled for that too. So
yeah,
it's always keeping your ear to the ground and figuring out who's going where. My brother lives in Raleigh now, so I'll also go down there to see some shows.
Yeah.
Like I saw a clearing rescue unit down there, which
sweet. Yeah.
Big dregs were down there. So
nice.
It was cool stuff.
Man, at this point, it's like you'll do anything to go anywhere to see anything. Like, where are they playing? I will travel there, man. Yeah, that's tough.
I've only played one full band gig since all of this stuff has started.
Wow.
And we actually have one more coming up, and it's an outside gig. So there's a caveat to these things.
Yeah.
Middle of October is the next time I'm playing with, the guys in the band. It's crazy.
So you play in, it's called the Ben Phelps Project, right?
Correct. Ben Phelps Project.
Okay. Yeah. You can check them out. Like, I think you have benphelpsproject.com, or it's on, I know.
.com, Facebook, you can, live stream our CD on all the platforms almost. So
sweet.
It's out there.
Phelps,
that's a funny thing too. Talking about playing, I actually joined that band when I was in high school. So it's kind of, we joke in the band, I was one of the only two now of the founding members. So Ben Phelps, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
And then it was me and some other guys who, we're still friends with them, but they kind of moved on to other stuff.
Sure.
So it was summer of my sophomore year, summer of my junior year, something like that. I started playing in this band and playing out in public,
Was that the first? Was that the first time?
Terrifying thing.
Yeah. Was that the first time that you had really played? Yeah, in public.
Yeah. I had played one outside of like school related stuff. Yeah. I had played one song with my brother and my dad at a live show before my dad's band played, and it was Joe Satriani's Summer Song.
Oh, sweet! All right.
Which for a bass player really wasn't that hard because you're chilling on A.
Yeah.
But my brother was in high school at the time, so he's trying to rock Joe Satriani. It was pretty cool, man. It was pretty cool.
That's cool, man. So you had that one performing one-off song, and then now you're in like a band, and you guys are doing some shows.
And it was nerve-wracking at first. I would have like my little cheat sheet down on the ground. Like songs that were brand new to me, so I needed to have the chord changes in case I forgot it because I didn't want to embarrass myself or something. But I think that was a great thing, just kind of putting yourself out there. Which School of Rock, that's kind of your whole mentality, right? Like start in that
performance based.
People can be what I call like studio or whatever you
call
your practicing at home. Like you could be a great practice musician, but if you're not playing with anybody, how does that translate? So,
well, and I mean, exactly, man. Yeah, I like that as well. Like getting into the real world experience, that's where you really learn everything. I can play the scales all day long, and I saw this meme the other day that was like odds of missing a note, and it was like in the studio, and it was like this huge bar, and I was like performing in front of people, and it was this other huge bar, and then it was like playing alone in your room, and it's this tiny little probability, It's like You can do it all day in your room, getting on stage. And it's not just you too at that point, it's maybe you're a solo artist, but generally playing a band, right? So then you're talking about, well, the drummer's not paying attention, or there was, something happened. Somebody spilled a drink on the bass player's pedal or something, and now it doesn't work.
Not too long ago.
Right. Yeah.
It was not good.
No, it's not. The
show must go on.
Yeah, they'll get right up to the front of the stage and they're like dancing and like they're clearly like inebriated. I mean, you don't have to play around. Often when there's music, there's drinking, and sometimes to excess, right? So, and you're at the front of the stage with your pedal board, and sometimes I kind of stopped bringing my nice pedals to bar gigs after a while because, like you just never know what's going to happen. And I don't want to be upset at some drunk guy. He's trying to have a good time, and, it's my fault. I brought this like super nice gear, like.
No, I feel you, man, because after that happened, I didn't bring my pedal board out.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, one, I had to figure out which pedal was working,
right?
Some clipping stuff, but then it was like you're saying, you invest so much money in these nice things, and you want to use it, but it's like you got to know the venue you're playing,
right?
Because sometimes there's not a barrier between you and the audience, and things can happen.
Yeah, if I'm playing the local dive, man, I'm probably bringing like my amp that I can set way in the back, and maybe like a switcher for the maybe like a channel switching amp, so I don't really have to bring distortion and stuff, like maybe I'll bring a reverb or something, like something I can just be mellow with, So in Ben Phelps, you're playing bass. Is that, I remember, so when we were in the Navy band, you also kind of played some synth bass. You were getting into that and some different things. So, but for Ben Phelps, you're playing mostly electric, or what do you do with them?
Electric bass. I mean, there's a couple of songs on our album where I've played my upright bass.
Okay.
Because it sounds so different, and especially bowed upright bass, you can't replicate that.
No, it's cool.
I mean, there's pedals and stuff that can try to replicate it, but it's not the same. Yeah. But I never take my upright out for. I take that back. For full band, full gig stuff, I don't do it. There's been a couple of times when Ben and I will play duo stuff. Sometimes I'll take an upright out, or one time I tried to kind of have a synth bass thing going on. I was trying to play some basic chords in one hand and just bass notes in other to try to fill it out for some of the originals we did. Sometimes it worked well, sometimes it did not.
Sure.
So I kind of reverted back to, go with what you know.
Okay. And playing the 5-string, I think that's a 5-string you have back there, and then
5-string. I recently got a 6-string. I've got a jazz. This is kind of goes into like what I envision every good bass player should have.
Okay. Yeah, man.
I used to have a lot more basses than I do now. So I kind of weeded out like what do I use? What don't I use? Because it gets to the point where you might be buying stuff just for the sake of buying it.
Yeah, sure.
I've got a jazz bass, because if you're listening to recordings or playing any in cover bands, right, there's some iconic stuff that's done on a jazz bass. And once you play enough, you can recognize these tones.
Okay.
So, I got a jazz bass. I have a P bass. I got this 5-string, which is the most versatile thing I have. I can make it sound like almost everything. It's really hard to replicate a P bass sound, mostly because of the pickup configuration on a P bass.
Okay.
Then I just got a 6-string. So I've been playing that out some. And it's, you talk about muscle memory and stuff. It's just kind of weird. You start to play a song that you're so used to playing on a 5-string.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're feeling an extra string and you might hit a wrong note because you're not actually playing.
Wait a minute.
String.
Yeah.
I also have a fretless bass, which I've used out before just because sometimes, it's nice to make it new and interesting. And the one good thing about the band I play in is it's never like, oh my gosh, you didn't play the exact bass line from the exact recording that we discussed. It's nothing like that. It's very free and open. We have the concepts, and then you kind of just let it happen as a group.
Organically.
So sometimes I'll mix it up, and like normally I might play something on this bass, but let's see what I can do on this fretless and see how it changes the dynamic of the group and what's going on.
Yeah. So you use on the 5-string, you have is it low F sharp, or how are you tuning that? And then the 6-string too,
It's a low B.
Okay.
And then on the 6-string, it's a low B and a high C. So it's just fourths straight across.
Oh, okay. Perfect. That's I talked to another bass player as well, and he does the same thing on his 6-string. He has the low B and then the high C, but on his 5-string, he has the high C and not the low B. So he actually.
All right, so I was actually toying around with that idea before I ended up getting a 6-string.
Yeah.
I thought like, I don't want to make a bass obsolete. So I could have a 5-string strung with a low B, and then what if I just got another 5-string and had the high C with the lowest string being an E?
Yeah.
You know? That way, it's like forces you, depending on what you're trying to do, to use the gear that you have.
Sure.
So the 6-string I got is actually, I got it because it was kind of a great deal.
Okay.
And it's a Court bass that they don't make anymore, but it's a very unique sound that this bass doesn't necessarily replicate, and that bass can't replicate the sounds on this.
Not a lot of overlap
it's got
there.
A single soap bar pickup, Bartolini, and it's very, I'd say it's geared towards the high end stuff. Like you can get some really crisp treble in there.
Okay.
And, the treble in this is a little bit different. Now this bass too is, talk about versatile. It's got a switch on it for active and passive.
Oh, nice.
It's nice because you can get different sound. Like if you just want to get what the amp sounds like, you just switch it to passive.
Yeah.
If you want to get more tonal possibilities, you flip it to active. You can do a lot of things. But also, you can be on a gig and you forgot to replace your 9-volt battery in your active bass.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone's ever done that.
No way.
And it just doesn't sound terrible.
Yeah.
So if that ever happens on stage, because you never really know what's going to happen, you can just flip it to passive and you don't
That's pretty nice.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's very cool. So the difference between active and passive is basically that active has like a preamp sort of on it's powered basically, right? Yeah.
Yeah, an active preamp on there. And there's all sorts of different configurations of how those work, but that's the general idea.
The basic idea. And then from there, so then you said you kind of use the pedal board, sometimes not, depending on how many, like what audience you're playing for. And then, so run us through kind of the rest of your rig. Like what are you using?
So it's interesting because I've been toying around with this new idea, but I'll start with what I've used for a long time.
Sure.
And I got 2 individual 12-inch Hartke high drive cabs.
Individuals.
So one cab, 12-inch, and then another one, 12-inch.
Yeah.
And the first reason I did that is because I thought to myself, one, I like the sound of a 12-inch because you get some of the lows, but it can still keep the highs. And with the high drive, it's part aluminum cone, part paper cone, which again, in my opinion, helps with it's more versatile, right?
Okay.
And Hartke stuff isn't overpriced, which I love, but it still sounds great.
Okay.
So I have 2, and another idea behind that is if I play, let's say, an outdoor venue at the oceanfront where it's just wide open.
Yeah.
You put 2 of those, and you've got plenty of sound, and you're running into a sound system.
Yeah.
Whereas the smaller stuff, I can get away with only bringing 1 amp or 1 cab out.
Yeah.
And a lot less load in.
Sure.
And it fills it up just the same. And it's actually got switchable ohms on the back. So it's 4 or 8. So then, if you do
2
within your amp now, it's like, depending on the ohms, gives you more watts. So you have so many different configurations with this stuff. For the longest time, I was using a Hartke LH500. And it sounds great, but I mean, it's kind of heavy.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a lot of old bass gear, like the old SWR stuff was like, you might as well be moving a house.
Oh, man.
Trying to play.
Yeah.
So I recently, a couple of years ago, I got the Hartke, what's it called? TX600, I believe. And it's 600 watts of power, and it's maybe 8 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And it's got a nice handle. You can just, it's so easy to move.
Sweet.
But recently, I've been toying around with, I got a QSC 8-inch speaker. It's 1,000 watts. That's what I was just playing through earlier.
Okay.
And that whole thing, I just went direct because, again, active bass, it's got the preamp on. It's got a nice preamp. So I don't necessarily need the capability of the amp head.
Right.
Especially for the small acoustic gigs, I can just walk in with bass on my back, QSC speaker in my hand.
Good to go. Good. Yeah.
I've been toying around with, how do I get more tonal capabilities with trying to keep my rig small, because I'm just really over multiple trips, heavy stuff.
Yeah.
It's nice to just walk in and be done.
Yeah. Setup is just one cable, one amp.
Yeah. So I've been looking at some of those multi-effect processors
Oh,
with
okay.
amp simulation in it.
Yeah,
So you
yeah.
can pick like a cab and amp head.
There's some pretty good
Pick
ones.
where the microphone is.
Yeah.
So I've been looking at some of that stuff. I have yet, to pull the trigger on it.
Yeah. Which ones have you been looking around? There's several different kind of options out there. TC Helicon makes some stuff, and Line 6 makes some things. There's a bunch of.
So again, some of the stuff, like the Line 6 stuff, great. But some of the stuff that they make, I don't need all of those features.
Oh, sure.
So I'm trying to find a happy medium. I want one with an expression pedal already on it because, there are some stuff where I use a wah, or I do some stuff with the volume pedal to get an effect,
Okay.
So it'd be nice to have that. So I've been looking at, I don't know if it's called, I've heard it said in multiple ways, hot tone, ho tone, hot one.
Okay.
That thing runs maybe like $500, but it's got a lot of stuff. And as a bass player too, one of the frustrating things I think maybe other people run into is you try to look at these things and you're typing in on YouTube and you're like, whatever you're looking at on bass or played on bass. And there's just not as many videos by default of people using these things in that regard.
Right.
So they've had some good videos of you have to dig for them, but you can find decent quality videos of people messing around with it on bass. And you never really know until you play it yourself if it's going to work for you. But so that, I'm looking at the Mower stuff.
Okay.
Mower, maybe Moer.
Okay. Yeah.
I've looked at the Line 6, the HX Stomp.
Okay.
Again, that doesn't have an expression pedal.
Right.
And there was one more that Head Rush makes some stuff.
Oh yeah.
I don't know if you've heard. So, but then the prices again, they vary. So it's like, what am I going to use it for, and what can I do and get by without feeling like I'm missing something?
So your idea would then be to plug directly into the PA from there. You basically bring your board, and then you would use the monitors or use in-ears or whatever the venue has.
I could bring my QSC as a monitor, and maybe have to turn it up a little louder to try to emulate some of the actual stage volume of regular cab fills out. But then it gives other people on stage too more capability to fine tune how much they want to hear me, because stage volume is a big thing.
Yeah.
And when you're pumping all these massive amps, sometimes depending on the venue might not cooperate, and it's overbearing.
It's too loud.
It's good to have options, and that's something I really am strongly considering.
They're nice, and they have a lot of great offerings from a lot of different companies, like you mentioned. It's not just one anymore. It's back when they sort of started doing it with the Bean. And they had a couple, like, that was basically it. You had that one, or you had, they're like, the Boss has been making some multi-effects pedals for a while, the GT series, and, some other ones, but they're pretty limited. Now you have really great emulations, really great options from a lot of different companies,
It's interesting stuff. And, a friend of mine started playing a Helix a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And I just didn't believe, like, it was going to be the same. And he got rid of his twin reverb and brought a little QSC speaker in this Helix pedal, and he was playing. I was like, dude, my ear can't tell the difference.
It sounds great.
Some people might be able to, but I can't. It's becoming that high quality that it's really more and more an option.
It's beautiful sound. And in the headphones and like out front and through a system, it sounds identical. The thing that I've been hearing a lot from folks and that I've experienced myself is I love the digital modeling stuff. I think it's really cool. I like the small form, the small footprint on stage. I like all that stuff. What you lose if you're a huge classic rock fan, especially if you're into like Zeppelin, AC/DC, like really any of the classic rock guys, you can absolutely get that sound. But that air movement, like the pressure that you get from the speakers on stage, is a huge part of the sound. Like a crank tube amp is a crank tube amp, and like it's kind of this hazard of the job where it's like it completely damages your ears and it's totally bad for you, but it's part of the sound. Like it is part of that mystique. It's part of that thing. You have to put it to 11 and just let it. That's the sound, and you can capture it. You can model it in the pedals, and it sounds. Like if you're just hearing it through headphones, both samples, you wouldn't really know the difference. But to experience it live in a venue, you need either really great sound reinforcement or, like you're saying, bring some sort of amp some kind of amp to try and emulate that sound pressure that you miss, you know?
Yeah, the first time I did actually try just this one 12-inch or 8-inch speaker, and I put my pedal board in, which is all, you know, it's a mix of some digital pedals and some analog, old school like analog pedals.
Yeah.
And the range of volume was kind of crazy to me, just going straight through the speaker. It was kind of unbalanced, but at the same time, when you, for example, put an octave pedal on, right, you don't feel the vibrations on stage. And it was very odd the first time I did that. And I was like, this is something, like I thought it didn't sound right. I thought something was wrong.
Right.
But then I read, you know, you realize, well, you're not feeling it like you normally.
Yeah. It sounds great. It sounds perfect. It doesn't
like,
feel the same.
But the vibe's not there.
Right. And that's a big thing. And you talk about, it's a great point about balancing your gear and your rig for the size of the venue, because you want to have that sound move. That's what gets people moving. It's really sort of the thump to the chest, the kick drum, the bass, like that low end. That's really where you're feeling the rhythms. That's what kind of connects with our heartbeat, right? That's kind of gets us moving. So you want to be able to supply that feeling, but you also don't want to like destroy people's ears and like get kicked out of the venue and never welcome back. Cause that's a real thing too. If you're too loud, then they won't call you back. And then that's the last gig you do there, you know? Yeah. So what are you using on your pedal board? So typically what do you use? And then like, where's a good place to start? I mean, bass pedals, like you're saying, are not really as popular as guitar pedal, or at least it's harder to find that stuff. Where should we be looking for bass pedals and stuff, you know?
Gosh, reverb, especially if you want to try something out and you're not really sure if, like, you've heard other people do it, but you don't know if it will fit how you play, because it's very different. Like touch on how some of these effects work will make it sound completely different.
Yeah.
But going back to like Red Hot Chili Peppers, man, I remember when Flea had his signature Crybaby bass wah. I used to have a picture of it up in my room, like, I want to get that. And it wasn't for the longest time, but I finally got a bass wah. And so when you're doing some like slap funk stuff, that's a cool thing to do. Or even like, I'll do some chordal things and I'll really slowly press it down, and it just makes this expansive kind of sound. So you can do a lot with the wah pedal. And then that bass wah, nowadays you can adjust the amount of, you know, the wah and the volume. Because sometimes when I first used one, whatever you press down, the volume could be drastically different of the effect.
Right.
You know, that goes back to balance. And back in the day, you get used to it because you just know, if I'm about to do this, I'm going to turn down a little bit.
Right.
But now you can kind of start to tweak it to where everything should be kind of balanced. But, you know, I've got too many pedals, to be honest with you, and a couple I don't really use. Like I got a TC Electronic Hall of Fame, I think
the
reverb pedal.
Yeah.
And if I'm just playing by myself, trying to do some solo stuff, work through some stuff out, putting that on, it sounds really cool. But in a live setting, I haven't found a purpose for that yet. But it's still on the pedal board.
Yeah.
But a chorus pedal is pretty cool. I got a TC Electronic chorus pedal. And that can add, especially on doing some chordal stuff, it gives it like a whole new texture and helps fill it out, I feel like. And also you go back and listen to Jocko, and like, if you get your mids cranked and you put on a chorus pedal, you can get a pretty sweet old school, like Jocko live sound. Okay. What else do I have? I got Electro Harmonics, the big, I think it's called the Big Muff. It's a fuzz pedal.
The fuzz pedal, yeah.
And I like that a lot, and I use it for various things. But that's one of the pedals for sure that, depending on the bass you use, you have to redo the settings.
Yeah, like, fuzz is a very sensitive effect. Right. Fuzz, and depending on if it's a germanium fuzz or silicon fuzz, what the transistors are there. If you're using that active pickup versus passive, I mean, even just making that, you're going to have to completely retweak the settings to get the same sound. It's going to sound completely different.
Yeah, I used to have a Boss, I think it was an OC3 octave pedal.
Okay.
But now I use the MXR
Oh yeah.
octave. Man, that thing sounds sweet, and you can get some growl in there.
Okay.
So I use that a lot. So I don't really use it much in the lower register because
It's too low. You
band,
don't even hear.
we're six members.
Yeah.
And there's a lot going on, and
Yeah.
that just muddies out a sound.
Yeah.
But if you get up in the higher register, you can do some really cool. It sounds like someone's doubling your part, which it sounds silly to say, but
Yeah.
it really does sound like there's literally two people
Right.
on stage, like filling it out.
Because then you don't miss that bass part, because you're filling out the bass part, but then you want to play high stuff, but you are
Right.
still the bass player. Like you're still sort of responsible for that sonic register there, you know?
So it helps you get away with playing around on stage without people looking like, what are you doing?
Yeah, right. What the bass is gone all of a sudden, like it doesn't feel the same, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. And I got a MXR envelope filter that pairs really well. If you can dial those in together, that's a really cool sound.
Yeah.
So again, that goes with, some old school funk. I mean, up through current times, people are still, that's a pedal that I would suggest having.
That envelope filter stuff can be used to very good effect on like pop and modern music and stuff, because they have some strange sounds that aren't really well, it's synth. They use a lot of synthesizers for bass, so it kind of gives you that edge, a little bit of that feel, depending on you can dial in.
Yeah, that was something I was doing in the Navy. Back when we were in the same group, I was playing synth bass, with a keyboard. But later on, I started messing around more and more with my pedals. And if you so going back to combining the octave pedal with the envelope filter, like you could get some really cool synth bass sounds, especially if you turn the growl up in the octave pedal.
Yeah.
That MXR. You could replicate pretty closely some of those pop synth sounds. Like you're saying, there's so much stuff we were learning for that pop rock group we were in the Navy band that, as a bass player, sometimes it got a little aggravating because you're listening to it and you're like, okay, I got to learn all these songs, but that's not actually.
It's not even bass, right?
So what it is.
Right. Yeah. But that's kind of cool, man. I mean, I always appreciated that challenge, like, oh, I got to fill in this string part, or I got to figure out there's these horn hits here. We got no horns in the band. Now what do we got to do? It's kind of interesting. Also, some of the classic synth bass sounds you hear, like the Moog, for instance, is a monophonic instrument, but what they're doing is running it through these filters and oscillators so that it creates this huge, massive bass sound. But really, a lot of those bass synths are monophonic. They're just really one note at a time, and then has to do with how you oscillate and use your filters and envelopes and stuff to make those big sounds. So having that capability through a pedal on your bass, you could probably emulate some of those sounds very well.
Right. And the last two pedals I have on my board is I have a volume pedal, which I think everyone should probably have that. It's so much easier than you trying to do the stuff with the knob, depending on how your bass is set up too. Because I use that as an effect, not kind of like you can't really replicate it, but kind of like a Leslie speaker.
Oh yeah.
You can get away sort of trying to do that. Again, it doesn't replicate it 100%. And there's actually pedals out there that are meant just to do that.
Right.
And then the last one I have, which I never use live, is a Boss. I don't know which looper it is, but it's just one little single. It's not like a major looping machine.
Yeah.
But I use that if I'm practicing and I want to practice over certain chord changes. I'll loop the chord changes and then I'll just mess around with it. That's pretty much the only reason I use that.
Yeah, that's nice for practice and rehearsal kind of stuff, Thank you, man, for sharing all the information about your rig and stuff. That's cool. Good information. So, and then transitioning, I think, into how do you practice? Like, what's your practice regimen? What do you suggest people do to practice, especially like maybe in 3 different stages, sort of as you're learning, as you're kind of becoming competent, intermediate, and then kind of at where you're at now, advanced, and like keeping up your skills and learning the next step,
There's so many different ways, and some people might hear what my opinion is and disagree with it. And that's
it's
fine.
an opinion.
That's one
it's
good
an
thing
opinion.
about music is you can accomplish things in a variety of ways.
Absolutely.
I would say for any beginner, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, like you got to make it fun and interesting to you. So I was doing that by trying to play bass parts of people that I idolized, even if I had no business at that point in my technique of trying that, or even knowing how they did it.
Sure.
But just, like, I want to know. And you mess around and you figure things out. I used to do stupid stuff
Hmm.
trying to get sounds. Like I used to take a slide and I used to knock next to the pickup because I figured out it made a cool sound. So then I would try to make up stuff to songs with like trying to do this essentially percussion instrument thing. Like, but it was fun.
Sweet.
So
Yeah.
I found, you know, a lot of different techniques that way. I got better at a lot of different techniques. Like, well, how is that muted sound happening? So at one point I went and got a piece of foam and put that under the strings, but which was a thing in some old Fender instruments. But you figure out, oh, there's a palm mute, and so now you're doing a whole new thing. So all about play something you like as a beginner. Yeah. Play along with people that you want to sound like. Yeah. And just keep trying, because there's plenty of times where everybody, well, I'm not going to learn that today, and I switch to the next song. But then on top of that, that's a lot of doing, you know, like learning by ear. I think learning by ear is a trait that everybody needs to have, because going back to what we were talking about in a live situation, stuff's going to happen in a live setting, and you need to be able to listen while playing at the same time and be able to.
You'd think that would be like pretty straightforward, that you would need to listen to play an instrument, but man, it's like the first thing we forget. We get wrapped up in like, I'm playing my part and I'm listening to the drums, or like trying to like nail these notes, and I'm not listening to anything else, you know?
That happened to me not too long ago. I was on a gig where I was sight reading a lot of stuff. So I'm just flipping through the songs we're playing. Well, here's a song that I pretty much start, and in my book, it's in F.
Oh.
Or no, it's B flat. So I start in B flat. Yep. And the horns come in, and I'm focused. I'm reading.
Right.
And it starts to dawn on me, like, what? Am I lost?
What's happening?
What is happening? So then the sax player turns around to me and is like, it's in F. And I'm like, it's in B flat. Everyone else is playing an F. Yeah. So that was just like, it happens to the best of us. I wasn't using my ears like I should have.
Yeah.
But I would say after I got through that stage, then it was kind of, now I need the theory to tie into, like, I need to know what it is I'm trying to do. Yeah. Right. So I need to know the what behind how they're doing it. Or if someone put a piece of paper in front of me, can I play it? Right? Yeah. Because there's certain gigs you get just because you can read music and the other guy can't. You know?
Yep. That's right.
So we're kind of tying those in together. And then for me, I just got so into it, and it's like, I want to go to college to be a musician.
Okay.
Well, what that entailed for me was I had to start learning classical bass, because the school that I ultimately went to, Christopher Newport, at the time when I was auditioning, to be a bass player, you had to play classical bass. Oh. Now, once you got in, you could join other ensembles, but you couldn't just audition as the
you had to play upright. Yeah.
So I started taking lessons with a guy from the Virginia Symphony, you know, and working my butt off. And I worked up enough to where I could play a song. I played my scales with the bow. And even though that was frustrating, because now you're throwing a whole nother element, right? That was not, I could sit there and play with my fingers, but playing with a bow was just
very foreign. Yeah.
But it's kind of just like never giving up and letting it, you know, the musical journey take me to what I had to do. And I would say, if you let that happen, you're going to become a much more well-rounded musician. Like, I wouldn't say I'm a expert in any of the musical fields by any means, but I would say I could hold my own in almost any musical setting. Like, you might not get Ray Brown in a jazz setting, but you'll get someone who can read chord changes and keep time really well. Yeah. Same thing in a rock band setting. Like, you might not hear the craziest bass solo of your life when it comes to, you know, the bass solo on Aeroplane, for example, keeping with the Red Hot Chili Peppers thing. Yeah. But you'll get someone who's competent enough now to fit the style, play something tasteful, and not mess up what's going on, you know? Yeah. So once I got to college, that was when it really kicked overdrive. Like, oh my gosh, there's so much I don't know. It was incredible, you know. I remember sitting down in an ear training class first time, and I thought, oh, this should be easy. I was learning.
I got ears. I can train them.
Down and he's like, hello, you know, scholars or whatever, and he starts playing the piano. Yeah. He's like, write this down.
Write what down? Yeah.
Like, I'm not quite sure I got the treble clef under my belt yet.
Correct.
You want me to write a piano part
Yeah,
out? Like,
right.
so and then I just end up drawing. Like it was frustrating, but you got to stick
Yeah.
with it. That's the last big point I'll say, because you get to what I call ceilings or
Yeah.
like doors that you think are locked. It's like,
Yeah.
well, I've gotten this far, but how do I get to the next stage?
Yeah.
And you got to keep trying until you find the key or you break the ceiling. However, whatever analogy you want to use,
Sure.
there's always the little breakthroughs, and it still happens with me today. Like
Yeah.
I could be playing something I've played forever, and then it just dawns on me like, oh my gosh, I completely understand what this bass is outlining a specific chord, or like it's a substitution of something.
Yeah.
Like stuff that I didn't know when I was young.
Right.
But doing stuff that's fun and keeping the interest, and then when you hit the hard times, you just got to keep powering through to get to that next level.
Yeah, I like that, man. And I also like how you said, you pick something you want to do, like you had a music school you wanted to go to, or you had a gig that you wanted to play, or you had something you wanted to do, and then you let that kind of dictate where your musical, okay, what do I have to do in order to make this happen? I got to learn upright bass. Okay, well, here we go, and then you stick to that and you choose a path and you choose a plan, and you don't say, well, I'll never be able to learn upright bass, so I'm never going to be able to do this thing. You don't allow that situation to like overcome you. You're like, well, I'm going to do this. This is my plan. This is what I'm going to do. How do I make that happen? How do I connect that?
Exactly.
Yeah, man. So what are you practicing today? I mean, like these days, how are you managing your time practicing? I mean, when you teach and everything all day too.
What I've been doing a lot, again, to try to keep it fun, I went and got that 6-string. And I've been trying to take songs that are recognizable, for example, a Beatles tune like I did yesterday, and trying to do it all solo, playing like the bass and the melody at the same time. And it's just something different that I haven't done before.
Yeah.
Or trying to figure out if I can play like Fast Car by Tracy Chapman, for example. Like figuring out those chords on the high register of a 6-string bass and trying to play along as if I was the guitar player. Just something different, something new. Everything can become stagnant, so I don't necessarily. And again, this is a difference of philosophies, but I don't go and sit there and practice scales every day anymore.
Right.
Or I don't have a particular warm up that I do before I play.
Sure.
Not to say that that's a bad thing. And actually, I would argue that it is a good thing and it's something I should do because it gets your dexterity going and ultimately you execute whatever you're going to play later at a higher level by doing that.
Sure.
But trying to practice when I can, because it's the balance of family. Like you're saying, I'm a music teacher, so sometimes you come home and you don't really want to do anything with music after because you've been doing it all day already.
I want silence. I would like it to be quiet for the next 3 hours. Yeah.
Exactly. So just finding a balance, and ultimately it's keeping it fun and trying new things. I would never sit there and just, at this stage of my life, there was a stage where it was like repetition.
Sure.
But now it's, what am I going to do that's going to make me sound better or have a different outlook on how to approach this song? Like I'm not going to go practice that bass line anymore. Not to say that if there was a show that came up, I wouldn't practice the stuff,
the parts,
how it's supposed to be until I felt comfortable with it.
Absolutely.
So it's all about finding the balance and don't stay stagnant.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Finding things that you like and something you're passionate about so that you can continue that. And it also points you in the right direction too. Like you're saying, you're not going to sit down and practice a specific bass line, but if you're learning for a show, if you're like, okay, I'm kind of tired of practicing this. I've done this for a while. What can I do? Pick something new and pick something you've never done before. Audition for a show that's, if you like slap bass or whatever, like maybe audition for a musical gig, play in a musical, or like go find a pop group or find a jam session or a blues night or whatever. And then listen to that and immerse yourself in that style and say, hey, what can I learn from this? How can I gain something from this? What can I contribute? All of that. Those questions then start to open up not just lines of practice, but also ways to grow your musical ability. Cause you can only, like you're saying, you can only practice so much until it's like, that's what I really like about School of Rock and what I wish, so when I was young and, you came in a musical family as well, like you had built in like I would get thrown on stage. My pops played in the church, you know, so like every Sunday, basically they would just throw me on stage and I would sit in the back corner and sort of strum along, you know, but it was those opportunities to perform, to play, that I was like, the next week I was like, oh man, you know, I really gypped that A minor this week or whatever, you know, like I'm going to get it, you know? And so School of Rock provides that. They've found that that really motivates people. You're around your friends, you're like in a network of people that you know that are supporting you, like the church or like School of Rock or like your band at school, any of these groups, you know, you need that network and that support. And then you need a goal. You have to have something that you're doing it for, you know, like I'm playing for this show, I'm playing for this performance, I'm in this band, or we're writing this song, whatever it is. You know, you can only sit in your room and be motivated to play scales for so long until it's like, okay, why am I even here? I'm not playing any shows. This isn't really fun anymore. You know, what am I doing? And I think that's a big component of what, you know, school music has gotten right. And I'm sad that to see it sort of dwindling, you know, that the school districts are pulling funding from music and arts and all that stuff. But it's something that, you know, that schools know, and that School of Rock knows, and that, you know, churches and colleges and stuff know. They put on these performances. You have to do a show, like you have to do a performance. And that's how you can stay motivated and also learn new things too. You know, I want to be in this show. I've never done this before. I've never done X or Y, you know, and that can really help to motivate you along the way.
And I'd say like the biggest thing is never say no to an opportunity that could help you grow.
Yeah.
Like once you say you've done a musical and now another one comes up, but it wasn't really your thing. Okay, then you can turn that opportunity down now. But if it's your first thing and you've never done it, why not try it? It might be something that you really like. And that's something I teach at school too. Like never just say no, always try. Yeah. And the biggest rule in my class is try your best and forget the rest, you know? So if you're trying your best and you mess up, okay, that's fine with me because you're trying.
Yeah.
You're putting yourself out there, which is like the School of Rock, you know, so many people have that stage fright.
Yes.
So getting put in a situation where you're already involved in that. So when you actually do go and perform in front of people, you're comfortable.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's something I do as a teacher too. I try to, especially elementary level, I try to be goofy with the kids.
Yeah.
Not that I'm goofy with coworkers, but like I tell the kids, when we're performing, you're on stage, I'm down here, I'm going to be doing the same thing you're doing. And I'm going to look really silly. So you don't need to feel silly.
Yeah.
Like parents are going to be looking at me like, what is this guy doing?
Right.
But it's all about making the kids comfortable so that they don't get a fear of performing. Or like the worst thing is for a young musician or someone who thinks they want to be a musician to get traumatized by a single event. Like that was terrible. You know, everyone laughed at me.
Never want to do this again. Yeah. Right.
It's like, but you don't know, like that. You could be really good at this.
Yeah.
It could be that one event. So, and it's hard as educators, as you know, like it's hard to coach the idea that yes, you want to strive for perfection, but it is okay to mess up.
And the best,
if you mess up, it's not the end of the world.
The best lessons come from when you mess up, really. I mean, like that's when you learn the most. And I think, so at some point, I don't know if you agree or not, but I think at some point we're all kind of traumatized on stage. It just happens in different places for us, right? And what happens, I think, as long as you stick with it long enough and you keep getting back up there, what you realize is, man, like I've failed on stage way more times than most people have, and especially most kids, right? Like I've failed on stage thousands of times and sometimes in front of thousands of people, right? But what happens is you just keep doing it and eventually you realize like, well, I didn't die that time. I'm probably not going to die next time. And then that gives you that confidence. It's like, it's just when it happens in the beginning, like you're saying, when it's like the first chance and then you have that opportunity and then you get kind of laughed at or something doesn't go right, that can be really traumatizing. But because you don't have all those other little traumas that have like prepared you for that, you know?
There's something to be said for, you know, you fake it till you make it too. Like if you get lost in this, don't act like, oh my gosh, I've messed up. You know, just you got to do something and keep on keeping on, or else. Because half the time, the people in the audience don't know that you're messing up.
More than half the time, nobody realizes it.
Exactly, maybe 98% of the time. People are like, oh, that sounded great.
That's awesome.
I missed that whole section.
Right, yeah.
What are you talking about?
I wasn't even plugged in for half the
time. And it was an F this whole time, and you thought it was great. Like they don't know. They're there to be part of the experience, not necessarily there to critique you.
No, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, being exposed to that stuff, I think especially at a younger age can really help you. And we have the same interest from our adult students. You know, we have an adult program as well, and it's very similar lessons, because how many adults, you know, are like, if you're in a corporate job or really any job and you want to move up and get promoted or do well, you're going to have to present in front of people. You're going to have to talk in front of people. You're going to have to try and like talk to your boss. You're going to have to work on a team, like all of these things. And so we have adult students that are learning just as much as the younger students about not just music, but about how to be on a team, how to interact, leadership, developments, networking, like how do we communicate? What are our communication styles? How do we function in a group? That kind of stuff. And that's so important now. More than it ever has been. You're going to work on a team in your group. You know, you're going to work on a team in your job. You're going to work on with people that you like, people that you don't like. You're going to have leadership problems, and you're going to be the leader sometimes. And all of this stuff is like, we think that it's like rocket science. Somehow it feels scary, I think, you know, like you think about it intellectually and you're like, oh man, I have to focus on my leadership skills and I have to learn these things and read these Six Sigma books and I got to do lean, you know, stuff. And I mean, I studied corporate. I have a master's in organizational psychology, you know, like I know how daunting that can be and scary that is. But the reality is you just do your best and you make it work as best you can. And the more experiences like this, like music and arts and, you know, whatever opportunities you have to get up in front of people and make a fool out of yourself, the more you're going to be comfortable with that. And the easier it's going to be when that stuff happens in work, in life, in important relationships, in important moments.
Exactly. It translates over to whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
Being able to put yourself out there will help you in every facet of your life.
1,000%, man. It's like the most important thing. Like I would take someone who can work well in the band, works well with the other people there, and can play pretty well the parts, versus somebody who's a smoking player, but I cannot get along with that person. And that's everybody. Every single band leader and every single person will tell you the same thing. It really matters only how you fit. Like there's a baseline. Like we all need to know like a 2-5-1. We all need to know some blues. I mean, like there are certain fundamentals you have to know or you can't get the gig, right? I mean, that's just how it is. But once you're on this level with everyone, then all those personality traits become much more important than how specifically and accurately you can play these notes, which is not unimportant, but you know.
Exactly.
Yeah, man. So what are you teaching your kids? So what do you teach right now? What kinds of bands, what kinds of groups do you have? And what kinds of stuff are you working on with the kids?
Really, it depends on the grade level.
Okay.
Motor skills from kindergarten to third grade is
sure.
But right now in this kind of COVID world, not doing a lot of singing.
Oh, yeah.
So kindergarten is kind of like learning musical families, basics, and then we get to play some basic percussion stuff.
Okay.
First grade, I got working on like Wharf approach. So I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's like hands-on instruments. So marimba / xylophone type things.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Second grade, I have working on electric keyboards, and third grade, we're trying to learn the basics of the guitar.
Oh, sweet.
So how it works, and you know, just very, very basic stuff.
Yeah.
Because I don't get to see the kids every day for, you know, an hour and a half. It's not like that. The schedule's very different. So.
Yeah. It's kind of a bummer, man. In person is really the best way to do anything, and especially music, man. You know, it's such a social thing, such an interaction based thing, you know? Yeah, man.
Right.
Yeah, that's cool. Right on, man. Well, it's getting on, we've been an hour or so already, man, you know, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. I appreciate you coming and hanging out with me today, man. Is there anything else you want to like chat about or talk about while we're doing it? You got you got a CD. You guys are recording another CD. I don't know. People don't listen to CDs anymore. You got another album, some digital form, I'm sure, of music that you guys are working on. Yeah.
We have an album out that came out, I guess it's really a couple of years ago. We started working on it. But you can find it on the website, benphelpsproject.com.
Okay.
It's got a lot of different flavors, rock, jazz influence stuff in there. So I think it's got a little bit for everybody.
Yeah.
We're actually going to the studio Saturday to work on a new song.
Oh, cool.
That we release with like a lyric video sort of thing.
Oh, all right. Doing a single, huh?
Check it out.
Yeah, man. I heard the last album is very good, man. I like it a lot. It's it does have a lot of a lot of influences. I can tell a lot of the different styles that you guys have listened to, and a lot of the different things you guys pulled from some really great genres to make something that's interesting and unique and very cool. And it's like a sort of a story. You don't see a lot of people making like albums anymore, you know? Like I was talking about this with another buddy, and it's like everybody's releasing singles, you know? And we're sort of in this like world where it's like, what can I do to get the most interaction right now? You know, how can I get people to like my Instagram or do this or whatever? And so people release a single, then they plug the single for a couple weeks or whatever, and then it's the next single, and then they plug that for a couple weeks and the next single. And none of them really relate to each other, or have anything to do with each other anymore. I really appreciate the album, you know, I really appreciate the CD, like the ability to sit down and like kind of go through a musical journey and like hear these different styles and these different parts. And I mean, that's what I grew up with. I like that kind of stuff. You would wait outside the record store to go like get your favorite CD, and you'd listen to it all the way through. And like, it was like a journey, man, you know, you would like enjoy it, you know?
You listen to it from start to finish, you hear the hidden tracks and how it transitions. Some songs went smoothly into others. Yeah, it is the fading thing, and that's a shame, but we like to try to paint a broader picture instead of just a snippet of what's going on. You know?
Yeah. I mean, it's the environment we're in, you know, you release a single here or there, you have a one-off tune, but I really like those the projects, man, like the sort of, I mean, you don't get like Dark Side of the Moon, man, you know, like you have this album about all the different like deadly sins and stuff. Like it has like a point, you know, like there's a message in the message, you know, and it's,
right.
Just that stuff doesn't really happen anymore. So anyway, whatever, man. Little plug for your album there. I like it a lot. I enjoyed it. You know, I'm glad you guys are getting some recording time, man, because it's just been so shut down, man. It's tough to get anything going, you know. So that's good, man. Right on, brother. Well, I really appreciate you, Matt Summitt, man. Check him out on the Ben Phelps Project. And if you're in Virginia, I guess hopefully you guys will be able to tour at some point. But if you're in Virginia, look him up and see when you can check him out. Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
I don't know. Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, I appreciate you, and we'll have an opportunity to chat again sometime soon, brother.
Sounds good, man.
Cool.
Catch you later.
Right on. Take it easy, man. Bye.
School of Rock. Santa Ana.